In this video, we're going to continue on with doing our account control stuff. In the last video, we did account registration, account login, and logout. In this episode, we're going to go over changing your password and recovering your password as well. To start off, we're going to go ahead and look at our URLs that we've done. Notice we're going to do a password recovery, and it's going to be named password recovery, and we're also going to do settings. These are all under the /accounts URL pattern. So with that, let's go ahead and open up our views and go down to our settings view and start editing it. We're going to add a template name of account settings.jinja. We're going to do a form class of password change form. This is a built-in Django form that we'll use. And then we're going to do our success URL of our dashboard. Then we're going to override the getForm method on our form view. The password change form requires it to be instantiated a little different than most other forms, and so that we need to pass in a user keyword argument of our current user along with the rest of our data. So we're going to just return our form class, and we're going to user equals self.requestUser. Then we're going to go ahead and do getFormQuargs, and we're doing the ** so it expands them all out as keyword arguments that we would normally use. And then finally, we're going to override our form valid and save off the form, and then we need to update the session auth hash so that we can properly stay logged in. We're going to pass it in our request and our user from our form. And then finally, we'll return the super call of our form valid and we'll be done. This uses all the default stuff in Django for changing our password. So the only thing at this point left to do is check it out in our browser. So if we'll open up our browser and we'll log in, we can go to our settings and we'll see we have the form for our old password and then the two fields for changing to our new password. If we fill in our new passwords, then we can change our password and see, hey, we're still logged in and we're redirected back to the dashboard because that's set for our success URL. So with that, we're done with changing our URL. And we're ready to move on to our password recovery. Django has a built-in password recovery scheme that we're not going to follow. We're going to do something custom, and this is where it gets interesting at being able to do your own custom things. This isn't necessarily the recommended way to do password recovery, it's just a way to do it. So with that, we're going to open up our views file and go down to our password recovery view. We'll give it our template name of accounts password recovery. And we'll give it a form class of password recovery form. This will be a custom form that we'll discuss here in a minute. Then we'll set our success URL to be our login page, because if we've successfully changed our URL, then we should be able to log in once we get an email. Then the final thing we're going to do is we're going to override our form valid method, and we're going to call the reset email method because that's something we're going to add custom to our form. And then we'll just return the super call for our form valid. So it continues on to our success URL. So with that, it's using our normal form view stuff. It's instantiating a new form, it's sending it to the page, we'll fill it out. And the only thing we're doing from there is we're calling a custom method on our form because we want to do some custom processing, but we want to push that off to the form because we don't necessarily want to clutter up our views. This is a common design scheme in our code to keep our controllers really thin and have a lot of our functionality / business logic outside of our views and elsewhere in our code. In this case, everything that revolves around changing our password can be kept in our form, and so it's actually a good idea to do so that we keep our views uncluttered and we can quickly see what they're doing instead of trying to trace through a lot of code and wondering what's going on with all the paths. So with that said, let's move on to actually looking at creating our password recovery form. We'll inherit from our normal form, and we're going to add just one field, and it's going to be the email field. This is going to be a required field element. So then from there, we're going to create a custom clean method for our email. And what it's going to do is it's going to try to actually get a user object with the email that we've actually given it. If the user does not exist, then we're going to raise a validation error and say, hey, we can't find the user based on that current email address. If that's what's happened, then we're going to go ahead and return the clean data. Otherwise, if we actually found the user, it's just going to return the user object to the validated form. So with that, that's really all that you normally need with a form, and it would continue on around its merry way as normal. We've actually called a custom method, so we need to go ahead and create that now. We're going to create a method of reset email. It's not going to take any parameters. We're going to get our current user object by getting the user from our clean data. And if you remember from our clean email up above, we've actually already pulled and retrieved that user object. Then we're going to generate a password hash. And we're going to call the generate password function that we have in utils. I'm not going to go over that. Basically what it does is it just generates a random string that's about 8 characters long. There's tons of code that you can copy off the internet on how to generate a 8-character long random string. So that's all it does. So from there we're going to get our user and we're going to set the password with the new password that we've generated. And then we're just going to save the user. So at this point, the user's password has been changed. Unfortunately, the user doesn't know what that is yet. So we need to actually go about telling them. To do that, we're just going to send them an email. That code is fairly basic, so I'll just go ahead and fill it all in. And we're sending them our email. We're passing our username and password in. And then we're also saying, hey, you can log in at this place and you can change your password in this other place, to encourage them to go ahead and change their password from what we're sending in their email. And then finally, we need to actually create our email message object, give it a subject, use our body, and then finally we're going to actually send the email. So at this point, we have successfully changed their password and we sent them an email with the information about what their new password is so they can successfully log in and change their password for themselves. In order to test sending emails, we don't want to necessarily configure an SMTP server in our settings and go ahead and send an email, then check our email and all of that stuff. So what we can do is we can actually change our email backend. If you open up a local settings file, and yes, I still do use this anti-pattern sometimes, and in this case I'm using it on purpose so I can show you how to convert to a more preferred scheme for doing setting. Anyway, if you'll open up your local settings and change the email backend to django.core.mail.backends.console.email backend, this will actually send all of your emails, but it won't actually send them to your email. It'll just output them in the console. So you can test all the email sending you want. It just dumps it to the console and you can inspect it there. So with all that said and done, let's actually go and give this a shot. We'll open up our browser, go to our login page and say, hey, I forgot my password. We'll be presented with a form for our email. Fill out our email address and hit reset password. And we're brought back to our login page. Fortunately, we don't know what our email is, so if we'll jump over to our console, you'll see where we output our email address. And so we'll go ahead and copy our new password and jump back into our browser, insert our username and our new password and log in. And there we are, we're logged into our account. We can go in then and go to our settings file and we can change our password. And then to complete the loop, we'll go ahead and log out and we'll try to log in with our new password. And we've successfully logged in. So at this point, between this video and the last video, we've successfully allowed our users to create an account, to log in, to log out, to go to a dashboard page where they can see any type of information that we want to present them. They can recover their password and they'll get an email with their new password in it so they successfully understand what the new password is. And then finally, they can actually change their password as in the settings of your application. So with that, our user access stuff is done and we're ready to move on to the next step of creating our product.